Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 78 of An Untold Narrative, where we host creatives from all around the globe who are doing really unique and amazing things. Today's guest is actually somebody who comes from the roots of footwear design and is also the first time we've had a guest from Poland, my native roots. So I'm super excited to actually talk to somebody who's also Polish and who also does footwear design, Kuba Blimel. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks for having me, man. And hopefully no one is concerned. We're not going to speak Polish here, so it's all good. We're going to keep it professional and English, hopefully, most of the time at least.
Yeah, no, 100%. I don't know if I could actually do the whole podcast. It's me speaking in Polish. I would definitely.
Hey, one day, maybe.
Yeah, 100%. The first, real question I've always been fascinated with as I've progressed in my footwear design career, and I've been watching your work. This is our first time, for the audience listening, this is our first time really talking, and we've obviously known each other from Instagram. There are not a lot of Polish born footwear designers in the world. There's probably a small handful. There's just really not a lot. And so are you I'm wildly curious as to how you got into footwear, because Poland's not really known for design or creativity. There's some roots in certain aspects like glass making and others, but footwear design is so niche. So I'm really curious as to how you got your jump start creatively.
Yeah, that was it's going to be a really kind of organic intro for me, because what you said about what Poland is famous about in terms of industrial design, it's definitely furniture. So my background is a little bit of that. I studied industrial design, which is relatively typical nowadays for footwear designers, I would say. And my my master thesis was about furniture, and my first job was as a furniture designer. And I was also fortunate enough to already in my first job have some, of my designs being introduced to the market. It was a small startup furniture design company. And why I choose furniture design is exactly why, exactly what you mentioned is it was a strong industry. So there was a job for industrial designer in furniture. At least this was my expectation. So I don't come from a creative family. I'm actually the only one, or the first one, let's say. So even though, art was always present in my life, and I draw since I can remember, I never wanted to be an artist. I wanted to have what you would call a proper job. So industrial design and architecture was something that I was interested in. And eventually I decided to go industrial design. And it wasn't until, I want to say, 2010 or 2011, when I was kind of already working professionally, when I started to get into footwear. So it was relatively late, you can say. And I was always extremely interested in shoes from a consumer perspective. Sorry for the noise in the background. I think my dishwasher just finished. So I was always interested in footwear. I would always kind of notice people's shoes, and that was way before there was any sneaker community in Poland. Internet was not a thing. So you only would see what you saw on people or in stores, right? But so long story short, back in the days, Concept Kicks, when it was just starting, was doing a lot of footwear design competitions, very small competitions. And I happened to be lucky enough to win one of them. And the prize was actually to go to Pencil. But I think they announced it in early December, and then the class was supposed to start in January. And I was in Poland. You need a visa from Poland to get to US, right? Yeah. They did pay for tuition, but they did not pay for the hotel or, flights and stuff like that. So for me back then, in my first job in Poland, that was really a lot of money. So I contacted Dwayne and said, hey, that means the world to me, but I just can't come. So Dwayne was, the guy that he is, was nice enough to offer a e-learning class.
Oh, wow.
So I had a first course with Dwayne and Pencil that was online, and there was actually a lot of very talented people on that course. Arnau that works for Adidas, a lot of people that really works in the industry right now. Archie Tolentino is a Filipinian designer, really great designer. So a lot of people you would know. So this is how I kind of got into, and my thought was, if a person like Dwayne, if a person like Daniel Bailey back then sees something in my really clumsy footwear drawings back then, maybe this is something I can really pursue. So then I basically changed my career. In Poland, I went to work for a Polish sportswear company that I actually work for right now again, because I kind of made like a 360 and came back here recently for a totally different position. So it's a little bit unconventional because I started late, but I'd had like a really solid background in drawing. So switching to footwear for me actually just took a couple of months, and then I managed to, in 2015, I actually got to go to Portland to have a proper pencil class.
Oh, cool.
And then in 2016, I got offered a job at ECCO in Denmark. Yeah, and to your earlier point, David, one thing that I have to mention here, like the guy who offered me the job at ECCO is also Polish. And that's Barty, and he's probably the most well-known and most accomplished footwear designers coming from Poland. And he worked for Adidas for a couple of years, and now he's heading the whole lifestyle department at ECCO.
Wow, we'll have to have him on the show one day. Sure. Yeah, talk about a super cool career. So, like, I know this just because like my family's based in Poland, and like I moved to America when I was super young. But when like both sides of my family grew up on like a farm, and like are also uncreative. Like I'm the only like real creative person, and sounds like you're the same. Like, does your family like understand? Maybe it's because I'm in America, but like my family still thinks what I do is like pretty crazy. Like, you draw shoes for a living, essentially. Is there still that today within like your ecosystem of your family in Poland, or like is it just more normalized now because there is more culture around sneakers in Poland? You live in a city of Krakow, and like or is it still pretty unique for the people around you?
Yeah, it's not unlike your story. I also come from a relatively small town. I don't come from Krakow. I live here right now, but this is not my hometown. And my parents didn't know much about design or art, but I do have to say they were extremely supportive. My mom used to pay for my additional art classes, even though, as you probably know or can imagine, like living in Poland in like late 80s, early 90s, no one basically had anything, right? So people were poor as shit. So for them to allocate additional money for my art classes and also my English classes, actually, I'm happy that they can see now that it paid off. So they didn't really understand it, but they were really supportive. And I don't know why, actually. I think they just saw, because I had good grades. Like, they could have pushed me to go to study law or some shit, but they never did. I never asked them why. I think maybe they saw, like, it's so deeply rooted in me that I would just figure out my way. And I hope I did. So I do hope they're proud of me. At least in that sense that I can make a living for myself just by drawing and, designing and making up stuff. So
it is really amazing. And that is rare, right? For parents just to let like the mind just go off and be super supportive. I think we're both fortunate to have like amazing, roots and family and who allow the creativity to just flow. It sounds like, I'm like curious, like you obviously, studied industrial design, you go into furniture, you win a footwear design competition. Like, do you still love furniture? Like, do you ever want to go back to it, or is now like footwear, like your love for the rest of your life?
Yeah. Rest of the life seems like a long time, right? I mean, also with everything that is going on, with AI and, 3D design growing and all those things. I mean, it's really hard to predict how the industry will look. I really loved what Dwayne was always saying, like, I'm not a footwear designer, I'm a designer, and for me, with my background, it's also a little bit easier to say that because I did a lot of other stuff as well. And I also draw a lot, things that are not footwear related. I'm into like concept art and illustration and stuff like that. Like I draw robots and spaceships from time to time just for fun. So there's a lot of things that I could do if I wasn't doing footwear design, but I love that I'm doing it and I wish I could keep doing it. I think there are moments where I miss furniture or basically any other kind of industrial design. I would never want to do a switch, but I think eventually in my career, if I can figure out a way to design footwear, but also other things, I think that would be amazing. But it's definitely my favorite kind of product. And what I didn't like about furniture, and it is important for me, is that I felt that I'm just designing stuff for extremely wealthy people. Because it's just, maybe it's cultural, or maybe because I come from a relatively poor country, people don't spend that much money on furniture. I mean, regular people don't. It's not like Denmark, right? Where people would have like, you would meet a regular guy or a regular girl and they would have like unique Danish, I mean, it's not unique for Denmark, but Danish design in their home. And it's just like, for them, it's just furniture, right? For me, it's like designer furniture, but for them, every furniture is designer furniture. But anyway, I was just tired of just like designing for very few people. And I just think footwear is much more like egalitarian. It's for everybody. And obviously not everybody can afford all the shoes, but everybody can afford some shoes. And the shoes that we're doing right now, it's also significantly more affordable than, for example, ECCO was. So that's also pretty cool because you can really see like very different people wearing your products. And at the end of the day, as much as I love the process of designing and coming up with ideas and drawing and all that thing, I think the most satisfying still is and will always be seeing someone wearing your product.
100%.
And especially if it's a different someone than you would expect. So that's definitely something that, furniture won't give you that because you don't visit that many people randomly, and shoes you see on the street. So that's the amazing part. And of course, the cultural part as well.
Yeah, I love that, like that drive. That's a very unique take. And I think that's super powerful that you are driven by being able to work on product that can support people from all different types of backgrounds and not only just one niche. I think that's really, really powerful. You mentioned ECCO. Obviously, ECCO is a massive brand, and it sounds like you went from your current employer, 4F, I think it's called, right?
Yeah.
You went from 4F as your first, footwear job, and then you transitioned to ECCO. How long were you at 4F originally, and then why did you end up leaving to go to ECCO?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of a funny story how I got there, because I actually applied for a ski jacket designer, because after Pencil I was so dedicated to do footwear that I just looked up, whoever can hire me at that time in Poland, because I was realistic about, I'm not going to get a big brand job immediately. I'm just not at that level, So what I wanted to do is grow my portfolio and get any footwear job, which I would, by the way, recommend to everybody. So I just sent my typical footwear portfolio to a random job offer that they had, because they were not looking for a footwear designer. And they called me and they told me, yeah, can you come to an interview? And I was like the other end of Poland, and Poland, it's not a small country. So, it is like a half day trip. And I told them, I just sent it, because I sent it, I'm not interested in ski jacket designer job. And she was like, no. We want to talk to you about footwear. And I was like, okay, when do you want me there? So I went there, and they had like a small footwear team, and they were doing what they could. But to be completely fair, it was more like, you go to China, you pick some styles, you apply logo, you change colors. That was the footwear that I kind of saw when I got there. So they were really, keen on learning that there are actually footwear designers in Poland. And I got a job as a designer, not a junior, not a senior, but footwear designer already, which was kind of cool. And I was there for 2 years because there was, I learned a lot, but it was learning by doing. There was not many people that you can learn from, which was for me crucial. Like, I come from a family of teachers, and for me not to have a mentor in that moment in my life was just a huge gap. So, even though they enabled me to go to pencil, that was like the first physical class I did when I was at 4F. I just thought, I'm kind of growing out of that company, not because of I don't want to stay there. It's just because they were not designing outsoles at all, just uppers. And again, the no mentor thing. So I was always in my life doing more than I was asked to. So at 4F, there was this design competition about clothing. And I don't know anything about designing clothes, but it was about future of clothing, future of 4F clothing. So I did this kind of like post-apocalyptic vision, and I did illustrations, of those kind of guys in like kind of the mood of movie The Road or I Am Legend or stuff like that, and they loved it. And the prize was to get those clothes made.
Cool.
Yeah, that was pretty dope. And I got like a professional photographer to do the photos and stuff like that. And ironically, this is the project that got me the job at ECCO. Because it's kind of funny if you think about it, because it got a lot of publicity, and Barty just saw it somewhere. And then he kind of like Googled me, and then he found out I'm actually doing shoes.
Wow.
He didn't know that. And then he just wrote to me randomly on Facebook, and I knew about him, and I knew who he was, and I saw interviews with him, and he was kind of like this role model for me, even though I haven't met him before, because he was the only Polish guy that actually made it. Yeah. So I literally like fall off my chair when he wrote to me, and then he was kind of, giving me some feedback without any agenda. And then after a couple of months of those kind of back and forth, he just said, "Hey, we actually have an opening in my team in outdoor, and would you want to come and have an interview?" And they welcomed me there like from day one. And I had like 5 days of interviews, and I got the job. And it's in the middle of nowhere in Denmark.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I visited Copenhagen last December, not this past one, but the previous one, and I met up with a couple of the people from ECCO, and it's like a 2 or 3 hour drive out in the middle of nowhere from Copenhagen.
Yes,
and everybody talked about how it's just like it's out there and there's nothing else around.
Yeah, but this is what I wanted to do, and I've been there for 5.5 years, and in meantime I got promoted to senior designer, and I grew the confidence that I needed to have. We made so many amazing projects, and unfortunately, like more than half of them have never seen the daylight. But that's also because Barty was this kind of like manager that just lets you do shit that you're interested in, and I wanted to do running shoes, and I wanted to do performance stuff, and ECCO was not always up for that. And but I learned so much. It's also mostly because it's really truly a shoemaking company, and there's very few other companies that will teach you what ECCO can teach you if you're willing to learn. So I spent there 5.5 years. Professionally, I could have worked there for the next 20. There was one thing professionally that I was missing. It's the performance aspect. But like the work culture was great, and I had the most amazing, talented team, and I really felt like I could learn from any of them. And I know it sounds like some HR bullshit, but that really is the truth.
What was your favorite part of that 5.5 years, like of working there?
Having R&D 10 minutes drive away.
Oh, that's awesome.
And having basically like a factory 10 minutes drive away. And when I was working on a project, I had a constructor that was, I could call him and he would like, yeah, come. And you would sit with them and discuss the project. And it was highly encouraged to spend time in R&D. And, you know how it is. Most of the companies, you just sit, you design something, you send to Asia and you hope for the best. But in ECCO, you can be there at, every step. And you can sit with the 3D constructor and you can sit with the 2D constructor and say, that's not what I meant. Like, please change it. And, some of the project that I uploaded recently, I think the constructor made like 15 uppers, like different uppers. I think we had like at least 12 3D printed soles, different options.
Wow.
It's just really the amount and the resources and the amount of time, but also knowledge. Like the guy who constructed, like who took my idea and made it happen for production, works for ECCO for 40 years.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There's no other company like that in the world, truly. Yeah. But, after 5.5 years, I really started to, think more about my personal life, which just wasn't what I wanted it to be there. Partially because where it was in the world, like geographically. And also, living abroad for so many years takes a toll, I would say. And I managed to keep most of my friendships through that time. But the same time, most of my friendships were still in Poland. And I met some amazing people and, befriended some amazing people there. But it just wasn't the same. I felt like I'm living in between Poland and Denmark and Germany. And I just thought it's time for something else. And I also felt like, again, like I want to do performance stuff. And as great as ECCO is, they will not let me do that. And I think what we did with outdoor last 3-4 years is probably the pinnacle of performance that ECCO can handle. And some of the designs that I was most proud of was also called the least ECCO. And for ECCO, that was not a compliment. And if you look at ECCO range, you might think it could be a compliment potentially because maybe you're introducing something different, right? But that didn't always sit well with people who, decided what ECCO is. But generally speaking, it wasn't a company fault. I just thought it's time to grow into a different role. And, sometimes when you're ready, stuff happens. And 4F reached out.
They reached out of the blue, or you like were still in contact with
here. Okay. I still have friends here. So I got contacted by a friend that is actually right now a creative director through that years. She managed to grow in ranks and she just told me, hey, like, if you're ever ready, like it's completely different company now and maybe you'll be willing to listen what we have to say. And we had a meeting and, again, it's just some things just happen in the right time. And I'm always trying to not to go too deeply philosophical here on you, but I just believe that sometimes things happen when they need to happen. And
Sure.
And this is one of those instances. So I've been here for a year. I have a relatively small team. So I have 3 people underneath me and we do the whole footwear range, lifestyle, performance, and kits. So
that's amazing.
That's a lot to handle, but it's pretty cool. I mean, there's definitely a lot of opportunities to grow here. And for me to be able to kind of like grow into that mentoring role that I was always interested in, again, coming from a family of teachers, it's a great challenge and I like living here and, it is what it is right now. And nothing is certain.
I think that's amazing. So when I was in my two roles ago, when I was previously at Vibram, I managed, 5-6 people, and I never knew that I wanted to, that was part of my career path or like something that I would really love doing. But like, to your point, it's like when you can mentor people or like guide somebody of like, hey, if you like learn this aspect of the role, you can grow and you can advance and you can get higher pay, you can get promoted. And you're like, you can set people up for success in ways that they never imagined that they could. And I think there's something really, really powerful about that. And so it's cool that you could build that pretty much from like a really small core team. And I think what's even cooler is like over the past couple of years, I'll say, is like I started noticing 4F. Obviously, maybe that's because I'm Polish and like my family talks about it, but it's a Polish brand that has an opportunity to like make ripples or waves in the water because like the Polish people, one, are passionate about their country, but two, like if you're making performance product, you can get sponsorships, get athletes. Like there's a lot that can happen with a very small brand in a country that like doesn't have anything like it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not to, spend too much time talking about, so it doesn't look like a sponsor podcast, but not to talk too much about the brand, but it, the company has been supporting athletes and, is like a technical partner of not only Polish Olympic committees, but also other countries. So if you follow like Olympic Games, definitely a big chunk of this part of Europe know the brand. And we also signed like Robert Lewandowski, which is probably like top 5 football player in the world right now. When I say football, I mean football, not soccer. But I mean, it's kind of soccer, but for us it's football. So maybe it's a necessary comment on that one. But so there's definitely that. And that also played a role for sure. Like I see a potential of growing here. And to your earlier point about mentoring, I feel like I received so much from so many people. I've been so blessed with mentors in my life that it just feels so natural to try to give back at least a little bit. And I was always kind of wanting to grow in that direction. But for me, it was always important that it's not either or, because if you grow into a management role in a bigger company, very often that will mean you just don't get to design shoes anymore. And I still get to design shoes. And for me, that was crucial. So I don't think I will ever want to not do it. And I think a smaller brand for sure gives me that opportunity.
So are you, yeah, let me ask you, like, are you stoked to go to work every day? Like, are you happy, like in general right now? Like, it sounds like a really good situation.
Yeah, I mean, I really like, for me, it was always really important to not prolong your stay, kind of like beyond your welcome, so to speak. So if I ever wake up and I don't want to go to work 3 days in a row, I will most likely just consider quitting it like really strongly. I mean, I won't probably quit it the next day. That's just immature, but, I would definitely change it because I can also afford it right now. Being 10 plus years in the industry, I have a comfortable financial situation right now, which is also important, because you can really be independent then. You don't have to, take any crap from anybody if you don't want to. But no, I have a great boss. I have a talented team. There's nothing not to like. And of course, every company has their struggles, right? But for now on, I'm definitely doing what I want to do and where I want to do it. So that's pretty amazing. Happy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love, the reason why I reached out to have you on the podcast is like, when we were, I'm going to guess we're more or less the same age, but when we were like growing up, you mentioned like 2010, 2011, 12, when like Concept Kicks was coming up, like, before, like in early Instagram days, it was like really cool and fun to meet other footwear designers around the globe by posting a lot of design work.
Yeah.
You might be like one of very few of like that era of designers and creatives that still puts out a ton of footwear renderings. Like you do it like a lot and they're always high quality and they're always fun to like admire from a distance. I feel like most of that group doesn't do it anymore because like, your career changes, like you're not doing it for as much exposure because you don't need it, because you have a more stable career now, because you've, progressed in a way, but like you still output designs all the time. And I think that's fascinating because none of us really do.
Well, that's interesting that you noticed that. I again, not to go too philosophical on you, but I think it's a good thing in your life to like kind of like celebrate your successes for a long time. Because sometimes we tend to really think long about our failures, but then when the success comes, you're happy for a day and then you move on to the next one. So for me, what posting stuff does is, one is there is definitely like an educational level, like for people, and there's a transparency from my side. Like, hey, if you want to be in that position, this is the skills that I have. And if you have skills at that level, you can, aim to have this or that position and do this or that, right? So that's like the transparency. I'm not pretending that I can do other stuff or that I can't, I'm just trying to be honest with whoever's watching. But for me, it's also like kind of like, how to say, like living through the happy moments of my product being launched. It's not just, okay, it launched, fuck, now I need to do whatever else. Now, no, I will post it. I will share it. I will share some drawings that maybe sometimes I made 2 years ago and they are like deep in my drawer and no one ever saw them. The frustrating part of that job is what you're really excited about today is going to launch in late 2024, right? The earliest. So you have to find a way to kind of like keep it rolling. And I also think, and that's maybe the less comfortable truth, but I also have to kind of say it to be honest with myself. I think if you're creative, if you're an artist, you always look for some kind of validation. And hopefully you kind of grow out of it the more you mature, so it doesn't define you. But I think it's like, if you say you're not into people saying they like your shit, I think that's not true. Like I think everybody's into it. And obviously social media is, full of shit and full of issues. But that's why I'm trying to keep my Instagram professional. Like you won't see stuff from my personal life there, very seldom on stories perhaps, but my feed is my work. Yeah. And I much more prefer to post my shoes or my drawings than my face. I think the drawings look better than my face. That's probably one of the reasons. And also we live in those times where, a lot of people work in 3D and a lot of people are starting to flirt with AI. And I think it's like, I want people to see that if you can draw really well, you can have a career. And you don't have to jump on any new bandwagon you see, with all the respect that, for all the people that work in different medias. I'm not trying to say everybody have to do the same thing, but for me, footwear, similarly to transport design, has been always very heavily connected with drawing and with kind of this more artistic part of being a designer. And I really enjoy that part. Like I still love drawing. We do in my team, like I introduced just drawing sessions. Like we would just take a day and book a room and take out markers that are a little bit dusty because most people work in digital. Yeah. And we would just kind of like, draw shoes for 4 or 6 hours. And
that's amazing.
Have some, drink some soda and eat some cookies and talk shit and talk shoes. And obviously in a corporate environment, you can't do it every week, but it's important for me to do it from time to time.
No, I love that. That's a really good, like, kind of like even just quarterly icebreaker with your team of just like relax, like reset, like
exactly
get creative. I think that's really cool. Kuba, I want to ask you a question. I like to ask a lot of my guests. Obviously we all couldn't be where we are in our careers without, help. And you talked a little bit about that earlier. So the question I want to ask you is like, if there was 1, 2, 3, 7 people in your life who have really like stand out for you that you would give flowers to right now, and who've really supported your journey, who would those people be? And then just talk about kind of who they are and why.
Sure. I mean, I think I touched it a little bit, but definitely good opportunity to kind of summarize it and call them out one more time. And the non so directly footwear or design related, but I have to start with my parents for, really being supportive, and not just on a verbal level, but they really put money into, my development in areas that I wanted to develop even as a little kid. So that definitely, that they have been really demanding, but they have been really supportive. And I think that makes me who I am. So that's definitely this. And then I obviously have to mention, chronologically speaking, Dwayne Edwards, and Daniel Bailey from Concept Kicks as well. Even though, Daniel, of course, in a smaller sense, but it was crucial for me. It was definitely like a game changer. And then Dwayne, being the mentor that he is for so many people, I couldn't claim him for myself. I'm just one of hundreds and hundreds of people that he touched. So definitely an amazing human being. Also a very demanding guy. Like, not many people talk about it. Like, he's crazy demanding. But great, inspirational, more than a person, actually. Like, he's just like an institution, right? And then definitely my second biggest mentor is definitely Barty. So this guy that basically went through a similar path than I had, and is just like 10 years older. And, he succeeded in so many ways. He's such an amazing designer, with zero ego. Absolutely one of the nicest people I have ever met in my life. Amazing mentor, amazing manager. And I'm really proud that, after 5 years of working together, I can genuinely call him my friend, because our relationship now, of course, has evolved. And it's not a professional relationship, but we visit each other. We stay in touch all the time. And he let me into his life. I met his kids and his wife, and I treat them as family. So definitely the biggest flowers. He was mentioned the last, but definitely the biggest change in my life came from him. And seeing, someone who can be that successful and being that humble just makes you rethink everything for me, and I'm really trying to follow his steps in many ways. And of course, you have to create your own identity. I want to do some things in a different way than he does. Like, he doesn't really participate in social media all that much. Like, he would post once in a while, but he doesn't put a lot of attention into it. So he's more on that kind of like side that you mentioned, like accomplished people that don't really do it anymore. And obviously there are differences, but huge influence on my life. And I wish in some time I could be, half of the mentor for someone that he was for me. Wow. That's definitely one of my goals.
That's amazing. Yeah, those are all amazing people who have definitely inspired and shaped your life. Kuba, I can't thank you enough. This has been super inspirational for myself and definitely for anybody listening. Just an amazing path and journey through your creative life, and I'm sure there's a lot to come, and I'm excited to watch it. Last question, where can people find you? Website, Instagram, obviously we've talked about you post. What is it? Where can people kind of stay in touch?
Yeah, I would probably recommend just Instagram. It's the most updated. I keep promise to myself to update my website a little bit better because I think it's a little bit dusty. But also the way people share their work changes, and I think Instagram right now is for me, at least at the moment, the most convenient. So let's just stick to that.
And what's your handle on there?
Oh, it's Kuba dot Blimel, and that's it. So it's like my name and surname. So people need to figure that out.
Yeah, no, we'll put it in the link below. That's amazing. Okay. This has been episode 78 of An Untold Narrative. Kuba, this was super cool. It's nice to talk to you and meet you for the first time. Also, I love having guests for the first time. So thanks for joining me and hanging out with us.
David, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure, and I hope I can contribute a bit to your podcast and your amazing project. And I heard so many great things about you before we met, and I'm so happy we've done this, and hopefully we will keep in touch, man.